Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby, and we are rolling through April. I cannot believe this month went by so quickly. Of course, I feel like I've said that in March and in February. I kind of sound like a broken record after a while, but I do feel like April went by pretty quickly. April was National Humor Month, and we've got a lot of great flowers out there, tulips, all kinds of beautiful things popping up for spring, getting ready for May, Mental Health Awareness Month. So if you've been listening, you know that we have great events coming up here in Scranton, Northeastern Pennsylvania. And if you don't live in Northeastern Pennsylvania, I'm sure there are wonderful ways that you can acknowledge or celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month where you are, and check out NAMI. That's a national organization. But today we're going to be talking about, it's kind of funny. I'm not sure. And I don't know. My guest and I don't really know what the hell we're going to talk about. We're just going to go with the flow. No, my guest today is someone I try to empower and inform and inspire and entertain women every week by having on wonderful, powerful guests who are women. And I know this woman fits that category wonderfully. She is one of the owners of the High Priestess Pole Studio in Scranton. You might remember back in the last summer, I did have on Shyla, and I had on, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank, but Ashley's going to help me out here. And Jeanette. I wanted to say Angelina, and I knew that didn't sound right. And Jeanette, who were two of the four owners of the studio, which is, I've been there a few times. It's great. Another way that women are being empowered to express themselves, and body acceptance, and just to work with their body and just really feel confident and sexy. So we spoke about that last summer, but today we're going to talk about what's going on with Ashley. Ashley is one of the owners, but she's got really great things coming up for women empowerment and for women to get together. And I always like to say, again, you get sick of me saying this every week, I do like to talk about how I know my guests, because if you stop and think, if you're an open person and you are open to being introduced to people, taking business cards, remembering people, you never know how they're going to show up in your life again, and how you can help them, or how they could help you, or you can have a mutual relationship and help one another. Ashley, like I said, is one of the owners of the High Priestess Pole Studio. And I actually met those gals from my good friend, Tina Gallagher, who is a romance author. You've heard from her on my podcast at least twice. Her adventures last year in Italy and England, and she's an international traveler there. And she has the Thick Girl Pole book, a romance novel that just came out. And that was inspired by the Pole Studio, because Tina went to classes and felt so empowered by the classes, enjoyed the women and did not feel judged, and just felt comfortable. And I got to know the girls through Tina. So I stopped in, I was at their grand opening, their Halloween party. And I love anything that's different, that's brought to Scranton, anything that supports the area, anything that supports women. So that is how I got to meet Ashley. And after all of my talking, because I could do that forever, I would like to introduce Ashley Matthews. Thank you for joining me, Ashley.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I want to say, we had talked, I think, like maybe last year, I had messaged you because you were doing photography, and I've seen some of the pictures you actually did of Tina. Tina had shared those with me, and my gosh, they were stunning. I want to say, I was like, oh my God. I was like, I have a crush on you, Tina. You look so damn sexy. Like, these were amazing photos. And you were doing that, I believe, Simply Lush. Is that the name of your business?
Yes. Mm-hmm. My business is Simply Lush Portrait Boutique.
And they were gorgeous. And I know you were doing that for a while, and we could talk about that. But I know that you also were kind of going through some reflection and changing some things about where you wanted to go with your talents and what you wanted to do next. So tell us what you're doing now, or what you want to change into, what you're doing. What you're transforming.
Well, let's back up a little bit with Simply Lush. So Simply Lush, I started full-time back in 2015. I went to school for photography. I also have a minor in psychology, and I just love everything about empowering women, feeling empowering, and just growing to be the best version of yourself that you can. So, I actually met all of the girls from the pole dancing through that journey that I had while I was trying to find my community and surround myself with like-minded individuals. And then, of course, we see where that happened, and that has its own story, which we won't talk about right now. But, Simply Lush, when I started that, it was boudoir photography. It was focused on, making women feel good, feel confident in their bodies that they have as they are right now. But I found out, like, throughout the years, there was something missing from it for me. And I figured out it's just as I'm going through my own self-discovery journey, I'm focusing more on the self-discovery and self-acceptance aspect of it now. Before this year, it was really kind of materialized in sense of like, a lot of what I did was through the lens of someone who wants to empower women, but it was also kind of molded by what's only acceptable in society, right? I'm putting a lot of women into sexually objectifying poses. It's almost like it's through the gaze of a male lens. And to me, it just wasn't, I felt my purpose was much bigger. I knew I was put on this earth to do something much more than this. And even though I know I helped so many women over the years, fight the stigma that they have against their own body and like stand in that power in their own terms, I wanted to evolve that deeper and kind of dive in deeper past that surface level. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm really excited. I have a lot of different, it's not just photography. Right now, I'm still trying to figure out, what it looks like in the physical realm as far as what words to use to describe it. I'm still figuring that out, but it's so much more than photography. It's really a self-discovery journey to help you bring yourself back to yourself, to come back to yourself, to understand who you are, why you are the way you are, and to accept yourself and to really accept yourself from within and also on the outside as well. So it's a lot deeper than the old experience, to put it lightly.
Yeah. And you're right. I shouldn't have jumped right to where you're at now because like I said, those pictures, like Tina, I was like, oh my gosh, these are gorgeous. And they were beautiful photos, but you bring up an interesting point. Like you were saying, it was through like, looking sexy in a certain way that we've seen and we've come to know what is defined as sexy by, we could say, by men, looking at it. But so now you're saying, maybe taking a different look at it as how women would define it or how they define it for themselves, right? Will you still do photography? It just will look a little different.
Yes, photography is still a big aspect of it. I'm a huge artist. I will always love photography. It's always been a way of creative expression for myself and why I do what I do. And it's more about diving in before your session, leading up to the session, figuring out who you are, offering coaching leading up to the session if you need help figuring out your values or anything that can come up. Like if there's anything, like just offering a safe space where you can come in, be yourself, and do everything on your own terms. You don't need to have a reason like, oh, I'm getting married, I want to do it for my husband. Like it's literally all for you on your own terms for however you want to feel, whatever you're looking forward to feeling. And I like to kind of categorize it as like it's an all-day experience. It's a full day experience where you come in, you have a safe space where you can really get down to the nitty-gritty of just releasing anything off of your chest. If you have been holding anything in that you don't have that safe space to release it. I'm that safe space to help you feel heard, to help you feel seen, to help you feel understood. It's very important to have a safe space like that for what I'm doing. But it's not your typical photography experience. We kind of dance, we do some movement, we kind of release a lot through our body leading up to the actual portraits. So there is photography. It's just not all about the photography.
Okay. And this is just a basic point, but just so people know where to find you, will it be under a different name or are you still using the Simply Lush name?
I recently just had to get a new Instagram because I got locked out of my old account. So that right now, all of my information right now is on Instagram. The handle is at Simply Lush Studio.
Okay.
I do. I am in the process of finding someone to help me rebrand everything right now, because I do feel that my target audience is definitely shifting. It's more focused on personal development and wellness than it is just, I'm going to splurge and go get a wedding gift for someone. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that, so you had your degree in photography and you minored in psychology. And
Mhm.
this seems like a beautiful kind of combination of that, because you're not just photographing the person, but it's more about their inner being and their soul, their values, their spirituality. So it takes, I think, a certain kind of person to be interested in that and to make someone else feel comfortable, because that can make a person could feel pretty vulnerable.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Vulnerable is a great word. And I believe vulnerability is one of the strongest emotions that we have as a humankind. Is when we become vulnerable, we are able to see the bigger picture and grow and really like level ourselves up into the best version of ourselves. So I'm happy that you brought the vulnerability up, because I don't take that lightly. What I do, I feel like it's so unique in itself. And I had to go through my own individual journey to get here and recognize this. And I wholeheartedly believe like I'm right where I need to be right now.
Yeah, and that's, I think it's interesting because we can't a lot of times we're always looking at what's ahead, right? Which is, I mean, I love The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, because it just makes so much sense. It's like, if it's what's coming next, if it's the next job, if it's the marriage, if it's whatever, it's always ahead of you. So when is it in your hands, or when is it in your heart? When is it at that moment? So we have to go through different struggles and, accept where we are and try to find the beauty of it. So you're where you are now. It wasn't where you were 2 years ago, and now you're ready for this. It's not, maybe you'll be somewhere different in 2 other additional years down the road, but this is where you are now. And I think it's great when we are open to seeing that about ourselves and about life, and really taking the time to reflect. Would you say was it difficult for you, or was this one of those, without, again, I don't want you to share more than you're comfortable sharing, but was it one of these things where the universe was like, hello, like you really noticed that you needed to take a step back and change some things?
It was definitely a combination of, I feel like, both of them. I know like at a young age, I was like destined to be something greater than like your typical, like, I can't get stuck in a 9 to 5 job. Like I went through my struggles to get where I am today. I worked that 90 before I even worked that 9 to 5. Like I struggled. I didn't have a savings. I didn't really come from money or anything like that. So I worked since like age 15 up to now where I am today. So like, um, when I first got that 9 to 5 job, I just knew I wasn't made for it. Like I just knew from a young age, I was just destined for something more with purpose, to help people, to help the earth. Like I have a vision of earth, like the future, where we're all very confident with who we are, because we're not worrying about external validation. We have the validation within, and we heal. We're all healed, and we're a happier earth. We treat earth happier, or better, I should say. And I'm going on a tangent now. This is what happens. I often go on tangents, but okay, so going back, it's a combination of, I feel like, my lived experience and my spiritual journey and my healing journey and the universe kind of coming together. And like last year was just like the universe was like shaking me, and I was just like, why can't you open your eyes and see what we're trying to like guide you and show you what you want, like what we believe you're capable of doing. And a lot of it was like my own fear and getting in my own way. So it was like a huge spiritual journey in itself, and realizing along the whole way, who am I? What do I value? What do I want to provide to the world? How do I want to make it a better place? So that's a great question. I love that question, but it's definitely a combination.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be open. Like you said, yeah, I think a lot of us, I won't say, I'll speak for myself, but a lot of times we kind of know what we need to change, or what we want to change, or what would be healthy for us to change. But maybe we're not ready, or maybe we don't want to see it, or whatever. But sometimes it reaches a point where if you sit and get quiet with yourself, and you're open to really the change that has to happen or ought to happen that's best for you, then you can really make these big changes. And I think to what you're doing, you want other people to be open with you, and discover more about themselves. You would have to be at a point yourself, obviously, to be able to help others do that.
Yes, it's definitely it was definitely a journey, and I've gone through it and I'm still going through it. We're not ever 100% healed, I don't believe. Lessons always come up from a different perspective, but I personally believe that the culture that we live in, it helps keep us so busy. It helps keeps us distracted, and it helps us avoid us be like checking in with ourselves and who we really are. We're just so busy all the time it's just so easy to disconnect with our true authentic selves. And I wanted to create an experience and an atmosphere that brings you into that world where you can do that.
Yeah. And I think you make a really great point there. I would say most of us, rather than the minority, I think the majority probably do fall into those distractions. We do that because a lot of times, because we're trying to avoid the other challenges or the things that we know we need to change or want to change that are painful. So, social media gives us this great way to escape, and that's not our real lives. That's not our real selves. So much on there that's just, it's so easy to get sucked into, but it's not real and it's not what we're really about. So what you're creating is, I think there's not enough of that. Obviously, right now we do need more of that to live a better life, a more enriched life, I think.
Yeah.
What would you say? So let's say someone comes to you and they're like, okay, I want to experience this. What would you kind of talk to them first to see that they're ready, or what would that look like? What would a day with you for this look like?
Oh, well, it's the experience I'm currently offering right now, because it's slowly evolving into more as I download more information. Right now, what it looks like is a self-discovery experience. So it's a combination of spending the day in the studio with me, hanging out like girlfriends, talking to whatever comes up, speaking to what your intention and expectation is. How do you want to get to know yourself more? Is there a goal you have that you need more confidence for? Do you want to feel more sexy? Because it could just be that internal, like, I just don't feel good in my body. And we hang out, we talk to whatever comes up. Right now, we do, like, it depends on the person and their energy. Like, it's totally customized to the individual. It's a combination of self-care activities that we would do, but the most two popular ones would be meditation. So it'd be a guided meditation based on whatever their intention is. And there would be movement. And if it's like, I want to feel sexy, it would be like sensual movement that I will guide them and kind of teach them like a choreography dance, like I would have in the dance studio, just to get in touch with their body. And that also helps you get out of your head so much and stop worrying and get more in the present moment. And if you incorporate things like this, like things that I do in my workshops, if we can even like create a plan where you're like, all right, I can be your coach outside of this and help you with your self-care practices, like be that person to remind you, like check in with you and guide you. So it's definitely a great experience, and it looks so different than just photography. And the portrait session, I'm doing those so completely different now. Like I was what I was offering before this was already unique to begin with how I guide my clients through movement for photos to capture their true essence. So it's great. Like I wish you had this session and experience before we did this podcast. Like you would love it. But there's like it's not even like I want to be categorized. I'm having a really difficult time actually kind of like finding a title for myself, because I feel like it's not only photographer, it's not coach. I also want to do like more movement, and the retreat. I have moon circles I want to start getting together every month, just that safe space for women to come and release. And there's like, yeah, a couple other projects I have up my sleeve. So it's just like, I don't know what I could even call myself. Like I wouldn't even call myself photographer anymore at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard when you're doing something that is unique and new, because even for yourself, I'm sure it's hard, because you also want to, one of the things I do is laughter yoga, and I still find myself trying to explain it to people because they think it's laughing during regular yoga, which it's not. Or I had people say to me last year, they thought it was laughing at people doing yoga. And I'm like, oh, that's horrible. Like, oh my, that's just sadistic. I wouldn't do that. So like educating people is key, because then to fully appreciate what it is that you can give them. It
Yeah.
can be challenging. You mentioned, and we should probably give it a plug now. I saw it on Facebook. You're planning something that I believe is in September. This it sounds like a wonderful retreat, right?
Yes, it is. So this is like the first time, just to anyone listening, this is the first time I'm like publicly talking about this new adventure and experience that I'm offering and taking. So come talk to me like a year from now, and I'm sure it would be much more concise. But yeah, the retreat, like I said, there's just so many, like, as I was discovering who I am and what I want to do and trying to break out of the mold of like keeping it to a title, or like, because as business owners, we often like when we create ads on like Google or Facebook or something, it literally says, okay, what's your category? Like what industry are you in? I'm like, what industry am I? Like, there was just so much. There was a lot of obstacles I came up when trying to figure this out. And I'm like, why am I putting myself in society's mold? Like, I need to think outside the box here and like just be real with myself. And like, I don't want to see myself caught in the same position where 5 years from now, I'm like, all right, this is no longer my purpose. I want it to evolve with me, you know? So retreats are one of those things where I was like, this is something different I can offer that, you know, is all around like my purpose and values, where I can help bring women who are disconnected from themselves, bring them out of the hustle bustle culture, disconnect. It's an off-grid location in upstate New York. There's no electricity. There's like a solar powered shower. And I have events planned like yoga, hiking, just really disconnecting, getting in touch with yourself, things I do in the studio just with a group of people, meditation, mini portrait sessions. There's also like a sauna there, but it's going to be a great experience. And I am like, my inner child is like, I'm so excited for it. I can't wait.
It does look gorgeous. I know I saw the post and I saw pictures of the place you're going to be, and it just looks wonderful. But again, like you're saying, off the grid. So you shouldn't be looking at, no binging Netflix that weekend. You're going to be connecting with the earth, nature, with other people, which is great. And you mentioned too, to break from the hustle. I think we are so ingrained. There's so much that's been talking about, your side hustle or this hustle culture and everything. And I think we're also finally starting to see other people who are posting the other side about that. Like, let's not do that. Like, let's take time for ourselves because, and this as a business owner, I've met many people who are like, oh, it should be 24/7, like to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, yeah, no, I think I'm learning more about the boundaries because you don't owe it to a client to be answering them at midnight. Absolutely not. You need time for yourself and you need time that's other than business. And absolutely, that whole hustle idea is really just not healthy.
I 100%. And that was like a whole nother part of what got me to where I am today. It's just like I couldn't live this. I wanted to like make life more efficient for myself. And being a small business owner, you want to be there for your clients, especially if you care so much about them. But you get so burnt out. You don't take the rest. You're constantly working. You're not making time for, oh, I'm sorry. Here I am thinking I can do this retreat outdoors. And I thought there was just a bug on me freaking out. No, but like, it's so easy just to get just stuck in the hustle. And it's so easy to forget to turn it off. And I told you before you started recording that, I'm a recovering type A OCD perfectionist kind of person because I'm trying to learn to let go and surrender to the process and not try to control the outcome. And I feel like it's all kind of like COVID, really. Like small business owners, I've talked to a lot of small business owners since COVID and just the burnout, overall exhaustion. We work so hard and it's just like, it doesn't have to be that way. And a lot of people who don't come from anything think it has to be that way. But in my own journey, I'm learning like it doesn't. And it just takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's interesting. Yeah. You mentioned that before we started recording, you said you were a recovering type A but that could be so stressful. So it's great. It's healthier, I would imagine, to be a little bit more like, let's go with the flow, because that's where so much of our stress, I think, comes from. I know myself, but my expectations of people and I will
Mhm.
never forget in my 20s. Apparently, it didn't resonate because I'm still doing it. But this nun who gave a talk at one of these women's clubs I was part of years ago, she said it's great to have hope, but try not to have expectations or don't have expectations. And I mean, it hit home then, but I still am guilty of it all the time. I'm often disappointed by what I would have done. I would have answered someone's email. I wouldn't ghost them. I would do this. And I'm still struggling with the stress of that. And I do talk to myself a lot, and I'm trying to talk myself down and say, you know what? You have 5 more minutes to dwell, and then we're moving on because this is so unhealthy. But I think a lot of us get caught up in that, women especially.
Yeah, and old habits die hard, and that's like the number one thing when you're introducing self-care into your life, into it, you have to make it into a lifestyle. You have to make it into a habit because it's a muscle, and if you're not working that muscle, it's never going to get flexed, you know. Um, but yes, that is I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, but yes. Old habits die hard is what I was trying to get out. I don't
So
know.
how would Oh no, that's okay. How would you say that, because to be a type A and then to now be more relaxed, did that just take like real practice ongoing?
So that's what I was going to say. Thank you. The stress is where I was going to go. So yes, I had a very stressful life. And I allowed myself to get that stress though. And I feel like, you know, it all comes at your own awareness when you know you feel like you need to make a change, I guess. And like my journey really started with healing and diving deep into like, why am I the way I am? And it required a lot of like inner child healing, figuring out like if I was making decisions based off of like, you know, a wounded child me, adapted child me, or like a functioning adult. You know, I had to really dive in. And this is actually like the whole reason, like my whole healing journey is literally exactly like almost a replication of what I want to do with my experience to help bring awareness and help other people see like what you can live life differently, because it took a lot of practice for me. I meditate now. I do new moon and full moon rituals each month. So twice a month, I do like this ritual that's a whole self-care thing. And that includes like meditation, it includes dancing and letting loose, and it includes like body scans where you're breathing and just feeling where you're holding stress in your body. Because what happens with all that stress is if we don't remove it from our body, it just builds up on top of each other. And that's just so unhealthy in so many different ways, as we all know, with cortisol levels and everything like that. So I just really want to like, that's kind of like the wellness portion of what I'm doing, like the why of what I'm doing, you know, almost kind of, and for lack of better words, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to those? Because again, not everyone is open. That doesn't mean they won't be in a month or 2 months, whatever. But
Mhm.
to someone who goes, oh, I don't know, moon circles, this is like, I don't know if I could do this. This sounds hippy dippy, or this sounds a little out there. What would, because there's always naysayers to different
Yeah.
things. And maybe some women just aren't open to it. Maybe they wouldn't be ever, but maybe they just need more education or, more time to come around to it. What would you say to someone who might say that, like, oh, I don't know about that moon and dancing, and they just kind of question it?
Yeah. Um, I'm not that big of a woo-woo person. For my spirituality trip or journey, you would think I am, because I am a huge believer in the stars and horoscopes and like birth charts, which is also another thing I do with some of my clients. But I'm not that woo-woo of a girl, and I can totally understand where it comes from, and how people can scoff at it in a sense if they're not into it. But those people I don't think are for me. You know,
Mhm.
it took me a long time in my journey to realize that I can't have everyone as a client, and not everyone's going to like me, and that's okay. And it took me a long time to like realize that's okay. You know, so I really want to work with people who want my energy around and are inspired by me and just want to work on themselves. They want to make a change. And I feel like for a long time, I surrounded myself by people who didn't want to put that change or put the effort in to make changes. And like new me is like, no, I'm over that. I'm not going to waste my time dragging you to a pool of water while you're thirsty if you're not going to drink it, right? So I'm only going to work with people who are ready for that change, who are ready to make any sort of transformation or shift in their life.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point because a lot of times we want to be everything to everyone. And I mean, as you know, like in marketing things, it's like you can't, not every person will be your customer. We know this, even though sometimes we want them to be like, we want, oh, but we want all this business. And so that's so smart to be like, well, those people aren't for me. And I just
Mhm.
think that's really smart business too. And it's also, it would create less stress because you're not trying to convince anyone. You're like, oh, okay, this person's interested in what I'm offering and their hands are out, their arms are they're open, and that's who I'm going to work with.
Yes. And, I am definitely taking my marketing approach much differently than I have in the past. It's definitely more feminine led. It's not as masculine as you're seeing, like, only 5 spots left. You gotta get it right now. Like, I'm like, no, like what you see is what you get. Yes, there are people I would love to work with, not even just for the business, because I'm like, oh my God, I could help you so much. But like, if they're not ready for that change, then I know there's not much I can do to help them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as you know, I mean, as you get into this more, like you said, it's going to keep evolving. And you'll, I'm sure as more people experience it and tell other people who are like-minded, it will be all of that. Like, yeah. And I mean, like I said, that retreat looks wonderful. I'm a big fan of like nature. So that just looks like the great setting to be outside and just, upstate New York just looks beautiful. So I think that's a really cool thing that you've got planned. So can we expect depending on that how that goes more of that kind of thing and that's for coming together like bringing women together.
Yes, that's like one of my biggest goals right now is just kind of bringing that community together. I feel like it's something that we need a lot right now. Over the past few months, I've been talking to women. Everyone just feels so disconnected, not only even from themselves, but just from community in general. So I do want to start doing that. I have other projects up my sleeve that I haven't publicly announced yet. So definitely stay tuned for those. But hey, Janine, do you have plans on September 29th to October 1st?
Believe me, I actually have marked those down and I'm considering attending that. I thought about it. I'm like, this looks cool. And I'm receiving your emails. I already have it.
Yeah.
I'm on the list. So,
What's
because when I,
interesting, what's interesting is most people who reached out to ask me questions about it were all small female business owners. And I was like, maybe this is just needed, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll admit that what sucked me in was like the location and just how beautiful it all looked. And like, again, being off the grid, doing something that I don't normally do. I mean, I do love kayaking and hiking and being out in nature, but I'm not someone that goes away in nature for a couple of days. I haven't done that. And I don't know, honestly, in probably many, many years. So something like that, I think is just very refreshing and as you said, very needed by a lot of
Yeah.
us,
I
quite
kind of
frankly.
taking like I've taken all of the activities that I enjoy doing to help ground myself, and I'm just kind of trying to bring those in here. Like being out in nature, like I love to take my phone and just leave it in a room. I try not to. I'm your worst doom scroller. I will sit there for an hour knowing I have somewhere to be, and I will get stuck, and I hate that so much. And I don't judge myself for it because I know it happens, and I give myself grace, but I try so hard to stay off of that. I try so hard to stay disconnected and connected here. And that's just really what I'm trying to pull in with all these different activities and services and whatever.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and you're right. And I think so many of us need that. It is just habit. And so many of us, like you said, I love that you said too, don't judge yourself for it because it happens. That's what we do. Like this morning, like I knew I had all these things I wanted to get done and I had to get done. I literally looked down at my phone and before you know it, 10 minutes of scrolling. And I have to say to myself, no, you're not falling down that rabbit hole because you do have a lot you want to get done. You need to get done. Put it aside. So I think providing this beautiful outlet is so important. And I to go back to something you said before too, I love the idea when you are working with someone one-on-one, the movement to get out of there because movement is so important. That's another thing I know sometimes when I'm sitting and working on the computer for so many hours and I haven't taken a break, just to get up and go outside and
Mhm.
listen to the birds chirp, walk around the block a couple times, or I like to run. So just going for a run, that stuff is movement is so important. It changes my mood. It changes my perspective. And it's exactly what I need after hours of just being in one spot.
This might help you and anyone that's listening. We think back to our fight or flight mode, right? When our brain encounters danger, it's freeze, fight, or flight. When we see a lion chasing us, we run. That's our flight. that's our body handling what we do with the stress in that moment. And like, it's literally so healthy to just move your body. Like, it's so scientific, like that stress, it does help so much. And, just like the movement and the dancing, not only does it help with that, but it also helps with like your nervousness being in front of me. And it helps you get out of your head, because like, I'm the kind of person, I'm not going to judge you for your job or how much money you make. Like, I'm going to judge you based on who you are as a person, your character, right? Like how you show up in this world. And like, if you're standing in front of me nervous about all these like surface level things, like, you don't have to be nervous like that in front of me, because I am not judging you. So I like to help get that dance to help them get out of their head. And they're like, yeah, you're right. This is fun. I'll do like really goofy, silly things. Be like, look, I don't even care. Like, you can be silly and goofy,
That honestly is so, I get that, because with laughter yoga, it is a little bit like it's laughing for the sake of laughing. It's not responding to a joke. So I will admit, I always joke that I don't know if I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, because as a kid and even now, like, I'm not the one to be like raise my hand in a room and be like, hello. I don't like that, but yet I do stand-up comedy. I taught in college for 7 years. So I can be the person, the focal point, but I don't like to take the focus. Like when,
Yeah.
so when I do the laughter yoga, it's funny, if I haven't done it for a while, I'm like, oh, people are right. It is kind of silly. But when I'm finished after 20 minutes of leading it, I'm like, no, it works. Just like I knew every other 30 times I've done it, but that shyness returns, but it gets our mind off of, I always say, running and performing comedy that I do, and leading laughter yoga, all of those things I love, because I cannot dwell while I'm doing them. My
Yeah.
mind is completely, no more ruminating, no more worrying about what I look like or what I worry about. You're so immersed in what you're doing in that moment. I love those things, because very few things can do that for me. So yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah, I love that so much for you too. I think that's great. If anyone can find any way to like, especially like self-talk isn't bad, but we tend to have a very negative self-talk in our heads. And that's something I try to help my clients with as well, reframing that whole mindset, which is very deep and much more work than your typical photo shoot.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, it's really, it's taking those tiny steps. It's knowing what helps you, turn it off, and or being open to finding something that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, self-talk isn't bad, but it's the negative. And we do tend to, I'm speaking for myself, but also other women I've spoken with, we do tend to, that voice tends to get the loudest or the most, attention. It's like, oh no, did I say something that upset that person because I haven't heard from them in a while? Or, oh no, I said this when I should have said that. Or, it's that, instead of saying to ourselves, oh my gosh, that person liked what I did, and I should know that about myself, but I needed that validation, or I thought I needed that validation. But you're right. It's the positive stuff that we want to focus more on. That's healthier.
Yeah, yeah. I love that.
So, those were all the ideas or questions that I had for you. Is there anything else? And like I said, I know that we talked about it's still evolving, but first I want to ask you where you'd like people to go to check you out and learn more. And then if there's anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd want to make sure you mentioned.
Okay. If you want to reach out to me, I think the place I've been posting the most is definitely Instagram. I feel like I'm finding more of my people there than on Facebook right now. So Instagram, my handle is Simply Lush Studio. And I am currently trying to plan an open house at my new studio in Pittston in June. So I will be going to Italy next month, and I'm hoping I have enough time to plan it when I get back. So yeah, just stay updated on my Instagram. It will be posted on there.
Okay, cool. So people can actually visit your studio then in June.
Yes, I'm going to have it. It's this beautiful, so I used to have 2,500 square feet when I was putting all the value into the material things and all the sets instead of the person. Now it's like a stripped down version where I can just focus on you. It's like this remodeled garage. So I'm going to have the garage door open if it's a beautiful day. It's going to be nice. It's going to be so lovely.
Very cool. Very cool. Anything else in closing at all that we didn't talk about that you would just like to make a comment about or anything?
No, the only thing I will say though is if you're listening to this and you had any negative thoughts, just, give yourself grace, and it happens to us all. And if you ever would like any feedback or help with anything, reach out to me. I would love to
Okay.
help you.
Great. Okay. Very cool. Well, and again, as I said at the beginning, this is what, for me, this podcast is all about, bringing people like Ashley to my listeners, because this is what I want you to learn about, learn from, even if it's one thing that we talked about today that gives you something positive or reassurance, or makes you want to, investigate, research, and learn a little bit more about something about yourself that could help you. That's what it's all about for me. So I appreciate your time today, Ashley. I really do. And I hope the best for you. This sounds fantastic. So it sounds wonderful. And I really hope that you feel enriched and that the people you work with will feel the same way.
My heart feels really full since I started doing all of this. Absolutely. Thank you.
That's great. And you honestly, you can't ask for better than that. That's a wonderful feeling. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank my listeners. As always, I say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to share it. And even if you haven't enjoyed it, please share it anyway, because someone else might enjoy it. And I also like to remind you that us little folks, we need your help a lot. So, I started a Buy Me a Coffee. You'll see that in the show notes, because it is a lot of work to do the podcast, but I'm so passionate about it. I want to keep it going, but you can make a donation to support it. But if you don't have, $5 to make a donation, just share the podcast, subscribe, follow, write a review, tell people about it, whatever you can to get some attention. And I want to support the women that I have on as guests. Check out their websites, check out what they've got to offer, and see what you might gain. You might start something new that might help you out a lot, that you might not have ever expected if you didn't hear the conversation here. So as always, I'd like to say I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.